This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Since the RCMP, of course, are currently investigating allegations of identity theft, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion in the creation of this $54 million app. This is a big deal. And as I mentioned when I moved the motion to extend this study, in the beginning, this was an exercise and an attempt to find value for Canadians, which, I remind everyone, some of the Liberals actually poo-pooed at, turned their noses at, said there was nothing here to see. And now we know that things are so much different. It is now a quest to get to the truth. So that's what we're going to attempt to do here today. And in addition to myself, you're going to have to face the prosecutor, Larry Brock, as well as my colleague, Arna Jenna. So I'll start with my questions. Mr. Doan, what was your relationship to John Oswowski at CBSA?
He was my deputy minister and president.
All right. What was your relationship to Cam McDonald?
He reported to me.
All right. And what was your relationship to Mr. Firth?
I did not have a relationship with Mr. Firth.
Okay. Who made the decision to go with GC Strategies instead of Deloitte?
My team made that decision.
Okay. Were you involved in that decision yourself personally?
I was not personally involved in that decision.
Okay. So as CIO of the organization at the time, you mean to tell me that you were not fundamentally the individual who made the decision to go with GC Strategies instead of Deloitte? Who would you pin that one decision on?
That was made by my team, and I believe right now, with the current allegations that are underway, I do not know in terms of who I would identify that to, and that's part of the investigations that are currently underway.
Okay. So if we went through all of your communications, we would see that you had no communication with Mr. Firth.
I would not.
Okay. Was a minister ever involved in making this decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Was the public safety minister at the time ever involved in making this decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Did you receive a promotion immediately before Mr. Oswowski left his role at CBSA?
No, it was well before he left.
Well before. How would you define well before?
At least 1 year.
How many years? Excuse me?
To the best of my memory, at least 1 year.
Okay. Did you go through this substantive process?
I was in the middle of a competitive process with Treasury Board.
Okay. Mr. Oswowski, I appreciate you coming here and attempting to clarify your name. So, again, I will ask the question that was asked before of my colleague, Michael Barrett. Now that you have recollection, did you have any communication with GC Strategies?
I attended a meeting, as I described in my opening statement, with Bottler AI, and Mr. Firth was in attendance at that same meeting.
Did you have any communication with Mr. Firth personally?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Ms. O'Gorman, have you ever communicated with Mr. Firth?
I have not.
Okay. Have you ever communicated with GC Strategies?
I have not.
Okay. When did you first find out about this RCMP investigation?
Well, I referred it to the RCMP.
Okay. Why did you not refer it in 2021, or why was it not referred between the two of you in 2021? Whoever would like to ask when Bottler first came with their concerns.
There were no allegations raised to me before I retired in June 24th of 2022.
Mr. Doan, do you still communicate with Mr. McDonald?
No, I do not.
Okay. How would you describe the communication that you had? There's a communication which indicates that you were told, or it was communicated to Mr. McDonald to let Colin do his magic. Would you recall, or Mr. Firth or GC Strategies do their magic? Do you recall that communication?
I do not recall that communication.
Okay. Mr. Oswowski, do you recall that communication?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, it was the communication where Mr. McDonald was asked to step aside and let Mr. Firth at GC Strategies do his magic.
I was not alive to any of that conversation in the background while I was getting the demonstration from Bottler.
Okay. Mr. Oswowski, was that single meeting that you had on Teams, was that the only communication that you believe that you had with anyone related to GC Strategies?
The only other record that the agency provided me was an email from Bottler about their being selected to be on a G7 EU thing as a result of their work, and he was CC'd in that email. There was no other meeting that I attended with him, and I don't recollect him even being at this meeting.
All right. Mr. Ozwoski, do you still communicate with Mr. McDonald?
No.
Okay. What was the role of Mr. McDonald in obtaining the services of GC Strategies? How would you describe his role specifically? Mr. Doan?
Just a brief answer, please.
He was the Director General in charge of innovation.
Thank you, Chair.
There are two basic principles when witnesses appear at parliamentary committee. Although you're not sworn to tell the truth, there's an expectation that all witnesses that appear tell the truth and give fulsome answers. Yet both of you testified before committee on December the 8th, 2022, and made zero reference to the RCMP investigating this matter, correct?
So
Yes or no, is that correct?
it's not a yes or no.
Ms. O'Gorman, did you advise committee on December the 8th, 2022, that the RCMP was investigating? Yes or no?
We were in discussions
Yes
and
or no, Ms.
passing
O'Gorman?
information to the RCMP
Ms. O'Gorman,
through
yes or no?
December and
I'll
January
take that as a no.
on the
Mr.
Bottler
Osowski.
AI.
Point of order,
Question
Mr.
to
Chair.
you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
please.
if my colleague could just permit the witness to answer the question
Yeah, that is.
for the benefit of all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that is not a point of order. We do have, it is the member's time, and we would ask that our witnesses answer questions.
Mr.
Please go ahead.
Osowski, on December the 8th, 2022, you did not volunteer that the agency and the contracts that were awarded by the agency and the consultants were under RCMP investigation. Yes or no?
I was not aware of any allegations.
Okay. Now, you also were asked not less than on 5 occasions about your knowledge of GC Strategies, and in particular the owner or the president of GC Strategies, Mr. Firth. And on each of those 5 occasions, you denied knowledge. Today, you're telling us, whoops, I remember. Yes, there was communications, and yes, I was part of a meeting. So why should we believe you now, sir, when you deliberately withheld that information when you were asked on 5 occasions about your knowledge of Mr. Firth and GC Strategies?
Mr. Chair, I did not deliberately deny anything. I was made aware of this when Mr. Curry actually reached out to me on LinkedIn to say he was working on a story about this. I told Mr. Curry that I had not verified any of my testimony with the agency. I did not have any access to my business records, and to the best of my recollection, I answered truthfully that I had no recollection.
Thank
and
you,
quite
Mr.
frankly, I
Osowski.
still have no recollection of
Mr.
meeting Mr. Firth.
Osowski, you were asked very early on in your meeting by my colleague, Mr. Michael Barrett. Question, in your time as president of the agency, did you have contact with Kristen Firth of GC Strategies in that role as president? Now knowing that you had a Zoom call meeting with Mr. Firth of GC as well as the principals of Bottler. So you said on record, sir, over a year ago, no, that was wrong. That was a misleading statement to committee, correct?
I had no intention of making any misleading
I don't care what your
statement.
intention, sir. Is that your response at the time? No.
If you were here for my opening remarks, you would have heard that in hindsight, I should have verified my testimony, and I apologize for any confusion that it has created.
Now, I want to know why you, as the president of a very significantly large government agency, was not notified by your insubordinates, one of them being Antonio Utano, about an allegation of not only wrongdoing, but potential criminality involving identity theft, fraudulent resumes, forgery, fraudulent billing, collusion, impersonation. How is it, sir, that you as a president would not be notified of a potential criminal investigation? Surely that complaint went to your legal department. Are you saying that there is no chain of command, that situations like this, as serious as it is, does not get reported to the president?
I have no recollection, and the agency has told me this matter was not brought to my attention during my tenure as president.
It's rather convenient, though, that you did, as an agency, report this to the RCMP when the proverbial you-know-what hit the fan, when everyone was talking about this $54 million price tag. So I guess you appreciate, with the little time that I have left, you can truly appreciate, given the lack of clarity from you and Ms. O'Gorman, why the RCMP is investigating this matter. You appreciate that now, don't you?
I understand the significance of the allegations, and if it
Thank you.
had been raised to me, then I would have done the same thing as Ms. O'Gorman. I would have done an investigation, and if need so, I would have referred it to the RCMP. But it was not.
Thanks, Chair. Ms. Gorman, how long have you worked for the Government of Canada?
Oh, perhaps 23 years.
Okay, in
but,
23 years, how many
approximately.
times have you referred files to the RCMP?
I don't recall ever referring a file to the RCMP.
Okay, thank you. This scandal is fairly simple for the public to understand. You've got two people who run a company with 0 other employees. They get hired by the government. They do no IT work. They subcontract the work, and they get a big cut for themselves, over $11 million on ArriveCan alone. The government chose, for some reason, to hire these two middlemen who did no IT work to then hire someone else, and they got over $11 million in the process. And so it's frustrating to hear, you're talking a lot about processes and procedures and how do we tighten the screws on all the processes, but doesn't that miss the core point that this one obviously really stinks? And why didn't government officials why did they think it was a good idea to give over $11 million to these two guys who did no IT work in exchange for their subcontracting services? So to really get at the nub of the issue, Ms. Gorman, why do you think they were hired?
I wasn't in the agency when they were hired. My understanding is that they had a standing offer that had been competed and established through public services and procurement, and whether I'm using the proper term, a standing offer or a supply arrangement for staff enhancements that the CBSA and other departments would use.
Okay, let me jump in though. So these guys had a great thing going then. Clearly, like if Stephanie and I said, "Hey, we got an idea. We're gonna open a firm in our garage, and we're gonna get hired by the government to do work, which we're then going to pass on to someone else, and we're going to take 15 or 30% of it." What stops any two Canadians from doing that?
I'm seized with the contracting function in CBSA, and I have outlined how I'm addressing it. The questions that you raised
let's take a step back and understand how this can happen.
Other departments who might be better placed to respond to that.
Okay, but clearly these two guys weren't just any two people. Clearly they had access to someone or something that allowed them to get paid by the government to do nothing. Is that not a reasonable inference? Mr. Doan, do you have a comment on this?
Who made the decision?
Those are
You can't say routine.
Those are allegations that have only come to light, to my knowledge, recently.
But it just doesn't make sense, right? Would you agree that it just doesn't make sense?
What doesn't make sense? My apologies.
Well, the fact that two people were paid over $11 million to do no work and subcontract.
The CBSA worked very closely with PSPC and all the rules governed by PSPC on all of these engagements.
Yeah, but this is sort of process mumbo jumbo. Like I think people would want to know. They got paid to do nothing. Why were they hired?
I believe.
Who made the decision? Let me just ask that. Who made the decision?
I believe, as my colleague at CBSA has said, that this is currently under investigation.
So you don't know who made the decision?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay, so none of you know who made the decision to hire these two guys, according to your testimony?
I can say, based on memory, that my team made the decision.
Well, who?
Who made the final decision? Who sent the email?
At this time, to my knowledge, I do not know, and it's part of the investigation that's currently underway.
Okay, so two guys got over $11 million from the government of Canada to do no work, and none of you know who made the decision to give them that contract, but you're currently investigating. I'm glad the RCMP and not just you are investigating. Mr. Chair, I would like to have a look at the emails that were sent or received from these witnesses that use the words Firth Anthony or GC Strategies from March 2020 to present. Can the department provide those within 30 days? Is the committee agreed to ask for those documents within 30 days?
Without knowing the volume and the required translation,
Well,
I don't
it
think we
seems
could
like the
commit to a
committee's agreed,
timeline,
so-
but we will endeavor to respond to that.
And
Sorry,
finally,
I'm going to interrupt for 2 seconds. That is a committee motion, so will be required 30 days, please.
thank you. And I'd also like
15 seconds.
Thank you. And I'd also like to request the calendars of these three witnesses from March 2020 to present. Will the committee agree to request that information within 30 days?
Yes.
So be it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think fundamentally we need to replace this Liberal NDP government with a government that cares about spending and values taxpayers' money. Mr. Chair, I am very concerned about the testimony we received in the previous hour. The gaps in the testimony previously shared with the committee, and as such, I would like to move the following motion: that the committee report to the House this motion of censure expressing strong disapproval of testimony given by Aaron O'Gorman on November 14th, 2022, and John Osowski on December 8th, 2022. In an apparent breach of the committee's privileges, Mr. Osowski definitively and inaccurately denied any contact with Christian Firth, and Ms. O'Gorman failed to share information at the committee about an RCMP investigation, despite knowing about the investigation at the time. Chair, I think it's important for us to report to the House these concerns that we have regarding the testimony that was received, because committees need accurate information from witnesses in order to do their jobs. And in the one case, the committee received information that apparently was inadvertently inaccurate, but I checked the record from December 8th, and Mr. Osowski was quite definitive. He didn't say "not to my knowledge" with respect to contact with Mr. Firth. He said a definitive no. And I think the committee might be inclined to view the issue more charitably if he had simply said, it's possible, I don't recall, but he was very definitive in his denial at that time. And I think the evidence suggests that Ms. O'Gorman, although as far as I can tell, was not directly asked about an RCMP investigation, she should have been forthcoming about that information. And for committees to do their work, they need clear, forthcoming, and accurate testimony. And when there are areas that witnesses are not aware of, they should at least acknowledge those things. And we continue to be looking for information about who made this decision, who was responsible for this decision, and that information continues to be withheld. So I want to put that motion forward. Thank you.
I'm going to assume you do not have that in French to circulate.
Chair, I'm moving it as the matter at hand, and I'm moving it verbally. I have been putting it together in the course of the discussions here, so I did send it to the clerk maybe 10 minutes ago, but I assume the translation process isn't complete yet.
Yeah. No, I was just asking because I'm hearing requests to have it distributed, so I just wanted to double check before I say it's not available to distribute. Can you colleagues, just give me 15 seconds, please? Also are at a point where we have to grant our interpreters at least an hour break at this point. So I'm going to suggest we suspend just for a couple more seconds so we can excuse our translators, and let me just chat with on
Mr.
options.
Chair, move to adjourn.
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Point of order, Chair. Chair, I put this motion on the floor highlighting significant concerns we have about testimony. The government wants to adjourn that discussion right away, clearly. I'm not sure if the government even properly had the floor when they move that motion, and you do have to have the floor to move a motion. And again, the government is looking for ways to shut down the conversation of this issue clearly, and that's obviously very disappointing, but not at all surprising that they're moving to shut down the discussion right now. But they do have to do so within the rules, and I don't believe that member had the floor.
Colleagues, we require to take an hour break as soon as possible. So I am going to suspend the meeting for an hour. I'm sorry, we have to suspend as soon as possible. I prefer not, no. Real brief,
Can we
Mr. Johns.
Can we just come up with an agreement to bring this back Thursday? I think it's worth a conversation. That's all I'm working for, because like I think a lot of us have commitments here tonight. Like I'm supposed to be in the house myself, so I hope we can come to terms with an agreement to bring this back Thursday and have a full conversation.
Okay.
But just we have the Bottler witnesses for 2 hours on Thursday.
Okay, colleagues,
so.
I'm gonna suspend because we have to suspend. I will discuss this separately, but we are suspended.
I didn't have translation when Mr. Jennis was speaking. I want to make sure that I understood correctly that we will keep the 2 hours allotted to our witnesses, and then afterwards we will take the necessary time to discuss the motion that we will have received in both official language on Thursday. Thank you.
Are we in agreement then? Yes. Colleagues, I would just ask that perhaps different parties might want to get together the next couple of days and just also iron out the motion.